Okay.
Okay, this is Ann Gray with Ann Gray Consulting, and I have with me Susan B. Bowman, the author of Lady Father. And tell me, Susan, your title exactly, because I don't get it correct every time.
It's the Reverend Susan B. Bowman. The
Okay,
reason for that is Reverend is an adjective. And so to start with that is not grammatically correct. So the Episcopal Church and the Catholic Church, I think the Catholic Church, that have sort of made that official. So whenever we get a letter, it's addressed to the Reverend Susan B. Bowman. And, we don't use just Reverend Bowman.
okay, okay. I understand. And you have written a book called Lady Father, and it tells a story about your life and how you were the first woman, if I get this correct, that was ordained into the priesthood in your district, in your area, right?
No, I was actually the second.
The
I was the
second.
first woman to be ordained a deacon, because
Okay.
you ordained a deacon first and then a priest. And I was ordained a deacon first. I was the first woman he ordained ever.
Wow.
But he ordained a woman in January of the following year, and then ordained me later in January.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
So
there
I
were
was
two of you.
actually the second to be ordained a priest.
Awesome.
But I was the first woman he allowed to enter the ordination process and go to seminary.
Okay.
So I was the one that started it all. I was the reluctant pioneer.
And you did that for 33 years. Am I correct?
Yes. Yes.
And you wrote a book about it, a memoir. Can you tell me a little bit about Lady Father, the book Lady Father?
Well, it starts with my entrance into youth work. After I came back home after I got a divorce, and I got involved in the local church in the youth group, and it was a good youth group, and it was very active in the diocesan. That's our area, diocesan youth group, and so I got very involved in all of that. And the more I watched the director, who was a priest, the more I watched him with the kids, and the more I watched him with doing the sacraments, I knew that that's what I wanted to be, that I wanted to do. But my bishop wouldn't ordain women. So I convinced him that I just wanted to go to seminary so that I could learn enough, because I didn't know anything about God and the church and everything, to work with young people. And that is really what I wanted to do. And I think I convinced myself of that because I was afraid to approach him about the priesthood, because he had been summarily dismissing anyone who approached him about it. So I figured that's what he would do. So I figured, well, I'll just go to seminary and then I can be, work with the youth. So that's what started the whole thing. And as my life went on, as I went through the process, which was very difficult because most of the people involved on the committee were against women being ordained. So they asked me questions like, who's going to keep your child while you work? They would never ask a man that. And even if he was single, it wouldn't matter. And so I went through all that kind of discrimination kind of stuff, just getting through the process. But finally, I made it through the process and I was ordained. And then all along the time that I was in different parishes and different ministries, I would come up against the same kind of stuff. And I was treated pretty badly in a couple of places. And every time something would happen, I'd say to myself, I should write a book. And then something else would happen. I said, I really ought to write a book. So one day I decided I'm going to write a book. So I got a fellowship from my seminary, and I went back there in Sewanee, Tennessee, for 2 weeks as a fellow in residence. And I got one, I could work on their computers because I didn't have a computer then. And I worked on their computer and had a floppy disk, and I wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote. And I thought, oh, this is really good. So I saved it on my floppy disk. I went home. A couple of months later, I went to start working on it. No floppy disk anywhere.
Oh
So it was
no.
lost. So I was devastated, needless to say, and thought, well, forget the book. I won't write a book. And then a couple of months later, it kept coming back to me and coming back to me. And it was obvious I was supposed to do this. So I started all over again. And it became very obvious as I worked on it that this was what I should be doing, that the other one wasn't good. The other one was more of a diatribe against, you know, everything that I had been through. And I needed to put that behind me. And so I did. I worked on that for a while with myself and my soul and my God, and just forgave it all and put it all behind me, as that's what happened to me. And then I was able to really write the book the way it's written. And so that's how Lady Father came to be.
Wow, that's really interesting. I know that one of the reviews that we have gotten that's on Barnes and Noble's website, the lady talks about how you gently and you know replay these incidents that happen to you in a way that doesn't really um, that doesn't tear down the other people, but tells it in a gentle way and
Mhm.
tells the facts, but keeps people in a good light. And I think that's what makes your book special. Um, Makes the memoir special is that you did deal with those things and put them behind you, and was able to write it in a way that doesn't tear other people down, which is admirable.
I worked very hard at that, actually. Everything that I wrote, I tried to read it from their perspective, the people that I was writing about. And I would go back and I'd try to read it from their perspective and see if I would be, hurt by it or anything like that. And so I worked very hard at that. And I had a great editor after I got it all together, all written out. I hired an editor, and she was wonderful. She pointed out a few places where I could be more gentle, and then my sister proofread it, and she's very critical of everything. So I think she'd be a really good editor and proofreader. And she was. She broke up all my run-on sentences. She said I was a lot like Paul the Apostle, and in his writings. And so she broke up all of those, and she was able to see a few, incidents that I could reword a little bit. And so by the time it was all done and ready, I felt really good about it, that I had really told the truth honestly, but without rancor and, without, as you say, tearing people down, because that's not the purpose of it.
Right. Did you face challenges and opposition to the publication of it?
Not really. No, in fact, I think I sent it off to a couple of publishers, and then I contacted Aberdeen Bay, and they said it would be anywhere from 4 to 10 days before I'd hear from them. And then the next day, I heard from them that they wanted to talk with me, and so I was in shock. I couldn't believe I had actually gotten a publisher that quick. And so I filled out all the paperwork and turned it in, and within a week, they called me and said they wanted to publish my book.
Wow.
So I was very fortunate, because I know people that go through hundreds of queries before they get somebody.
Right.
And,
Or
some people end up self-publishing because they can't get anybody. So
right.
I was very fortunate.
Right. A magazine is writing a story about women in ministry and featuring your story. Tell me about that.
Well, I actually wanted to get the Living Church, which is the Episcopal Church National Magazine. I had done an article on me back in 2011 when the book was first published. And I thought this would be a good article. They would kind of do a follow-up that, she's Lady Father is back kind of thing. But I got an email from him, and he told me that they didn't have a place for that, but he told me about the Episcopal New Yorker, which is the Episcopal magazine for the Diocese of New York, which is different from ours. It's just west of us. So it's close, but it's a different diocese. And so I wrote to them because he said it was an article, no, a whole issue about women and their difficulties and what they do, and it was one of the items. And it sounded like it was written with my name in it. It was so me. I couldn't believe it. And so I wrote to him, and he wrote me back and said, "This is so perfect. You are so perfect for this article." And so I've written the article and turned it in. He told me it had to be in by the end of September. So he has the article and he has the pictures. And so now I'm waiting for it to come out.
Okay, so when will that be?
I honestly don't know. They haven't told me that. I'm guessing sometime next month,
Okay.
possibly this month. I mean, possibly October, possibly November. I'm not sure.
And the name of it is the Episcopalian New Yorker.
No, the Episcopal New Yorker.
The Episcopal New Yorker.
Right.
We'll have to keep our eyes open for that.
I'm sure they'll send me a copy.
Yeah, and we will have to announce it so everyone can look at it.
Right.
After,
we'll definitely do that.
yeah, definitely. We want to read that. That's exciting.
No, it was exciting. I was jumping up and down. I couldn't believe that a magazine like that actually wanted my story.
Well, yeah, and you, this is the second launch of your book, the way I understand it.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes, it is.
Now, after spending your life in ministry, and you've accomplished you've taken such huge strides against, discrimination against women. What advice would you give to a woman who feels they're called to a life of ministry?
Well, my best advice is what I came to myself that I had to do, and that was not to fight a cause. When I went to the bishop and I decided I needed to be ordained, it was not because I thought women should be ordained. It was because I knew that God wanted me to be ordained. And that's two different things. To think that I should be ordained because I want to be and I'm a woman and so therefore they have to let me be ordained, that's a cause.
Right.
And if I had gone into it fighting a cause, my bishop would have shut the door. And he told me that the only reason he let me in was because I didn't try to knock the door down. And that's the way I did everything, just like the book, gently. I was not fighting a cause. I told my bishop up here in Albany that I was not a cause fighter and that I would only preach Jesus from my pulpit and I would never be on the steps of the Capitol with placards and, all that stuff, because that's not what I was about. And he was tickled to death with that. I think that went a long ways to helping him accept women as viable and vital priests in the diocese and in the church. He was adamantly opposed, just like my other bishop was. And I was the first woman he allowed to be hired as the full-time rector of a parish in this diocese. So I've been a two-time pioneer. And I didn't want to be that, but that's what I was. And so, but my mission was to be the best priest I could possibly be for God. And that was my number one thing to do. And what other people thought of me was what they thought of me. There was nothing I could do to change that. But as it turned out, I did change that for a lot of people. And that was very satisfying for me. And I was honored to be a part of their transition. And both of my bishops are in that category. They're my heroes. They really are.
Wow. What an awesome adventure and a story. Very exciting. So Lady Father is available now on Amazon. Am I correct?
Yes, it is. It's on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, IndieBound, and several others. It's actually a local bookstore here has picked it up, and it's on their website. And so that is very exciting for me because it's local.
Right.
And now I can go to them and say, can I have a book signing?
Yeah, that's great.
Yep.
So, and they can go to your website to find the book and hear more about it. And your website is ladyfather.com, correct?
That's right. That's right. And it has um, a lot of information about the whole Lady Father process and how it happened. There's a page about the memoir itself and talks about what it says and does. And then there's one about me, page about me. And then I've got some sermons and articles that I've written over the years. The articles have to do with some national church issues like women's ordination. I wrote one article when the Pope came out with his edict that said that women who are ordained or people who ordained women were right up in the same category with child abusers
Oh
as
my.
people of sin. And I wrote a blistering article about that, like, and the article's title was "He's Gone Too Far."
Wow.
And it never went anywhere, but I wrote it and it felt good. And so that's on there. Things like what to call a woman priest, some of the experiences that I had, vacations with my grandchildren, some different fun things like that. There's some articles about my experiences and what I learned from them. Some that made me cry, some that made me laugh. So there's some more articles I want to put on there, but that's what's on there now.
Okay. Wonderful. So you can find her book at ladyfather.com. And we appreciate you sharing with us today, Susan, and taking the time to talk to us about your book. And we look forward to reading it and hearing more about your adventures.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity.